Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my little broadcast. Before I get into all this, I think I should start this broadcast by explaining what's going on and what it's all for. Because basically, the whole point, the intention behind this recording is meant to be a sort of vent for me. This is meant to be a time when I can just sit back, hit record, and let all the thoughts flow out of my head. Because here's the deal, right? I have a lot on my mind. Way too much to just keep contained in my head. I have a lot on my mind. A lot of things that keep me daydreaming, keep me awake at night. And at some point, I decided that I really needed an outlet for these thoughts because it's all kind of unhealthy, you know? And before you chime in, no, I'm not venting to my friends because I have no friends. That's not true. I do have friends like a normal functioning member of society. But I know full well that they're all busy with their lives and don't have the time to entertain my little spiels. I'm not venting to my family either because they too are busy with their lives and therefore don't have the time to listen to me rambling. Because the thing is, and this is something that only occurred to me recently, I tend to not know what to say when I'm actively talking to someone. I'm a bit slow and can't really keep up a normal conversation because I am truly special. But when I'm alone, somehow words can flow out of my mouth much more easily. The me who talks to myself is a much different person from the me who talks to other people. Maybe I could come off as a quiet or timid individual to some people. I could be quite introverted, which I'm not trying to deny. That very much is true. It's just that I'm completely holding myself back in front of others because I'm like a chronic overthinker. A million thoughts rush through my brain whenever I'm trying to hold a casual conversation. And I always feel that I have to watch what I say and it's all a mess. But when it's just me and the endless void, there's none of that sort of pressure, let's say. There's none of the pressure to say the right things to keep the conversation going like it should. Instead, it's just me and the void. And so I can let whatever thoughts I have just flow out. And that's why I'm here today. I'm sat here in my little bedroom. I'm all alone. Just me and the endless void. And I shall let it all flow out for the next 30 or so minutes. Hopefully it would be at least 30 or 40 or even 50. Obviously you would know if you're listening right now. And one final thing, no, I am not talking to a therapist. I'm not going to go out of my way to get a complete stranger, no matter how qualified they may be. I won't go out and get a stranger to sit there as I go about my spiels, my tangents, my diatribes, or whatnot. I'm scared of interacting with new people, let alone opening up to them about my thoughts, because I have problems. Now, real problems like my peers would have, like juggling responsibilities as young adults or keeping up a work-life balance. Not saying I don't have those sorts of problems either. I'm just saying that in this point in time, I've drawn a nice thick curtain on those sorts of problems for the time being. Like, shh. My problems, when I'm isolated from reality, consist of recalling stupid, embarrassing moments that have happened in my life. So while other people are wondering if they'll be able to land a job in the field they've drowned themselves in student debt for because the market's fucked and everything, I'm stuck here thinking about that time I directly gave cash to the cashier in Japan by hand instead of putting the yen in the tray like you're fucking supposed to. I got problems, trivial as they may be. I got too much in my head, and thoughts are always running through it every single day, and that's unhealthy. I'm pretty sure. So this is helpful for me. Talking to the void and everything. It's good for my mental health. This is self-care because I love myself. Everything will be just fine until I draw the curtains back open again and I am once more faced with the hell I've created. But again, that's not what I'm here for. That was quite the lengthy intro, but this is more content. And this is exactly what I was gunning for. Padding out the runtime and everything. Right, so with all that out of the way, I guess it's time to focus on talking about some specific thing in my mind. Okay, right. I got it. How about I get into my trip to Japan? It's actually been a year since then, and to this day, I still got a whole lot to talk about regarding that trip, believe it or not. It's definitely one of the big things on my mind because I'm somehow still reeling from it, even a whole year later. Not a day goes by without me thinking about going back, but that's for later. Right, I'm gonna start from the very beginning. I'm not sure how long it's gonna take me to get to the end, probably more than enough to pad out the runtime, yeah. So, to begin, even well before this trip, I was daydreaming about it literally every day for months. That's how much of a big deal it was for me. It was a dream trip in the truest sense imaginable. Like, I've seen, heard, and read about Japan and everything for years, from like books, shows, videos, and whatnot, and I was, frankly, very infatuated with it all. And I always wanted to actually be there in Japan to experience all that for myself. Then, months before our departure, sure, hour because it was obviously a family trip, when we finally confirmed the trip, like we were legit doing this, then began the daily daydream. Like, I hope I've been able to properly express to you how I felt even before the trip. We had a whole itinerary planned out and everything, and it was all peachy keen. I was very much excited, ecstatic, elated, and this went on for like 5 months. We confirmed it in early January, I believe, and then the long road to heaven, or I guess Tengoku, began. I went about my daily life because I'm a university student and all that, so I have real responsibilities for the next few months. Then came the fabled day of departure. After we got through all the menial red tape that constitutes checking in at an airport, I actually got pulled aside for a random check, which was the first time that actually happened to me. It's supposed to be random, but I still couldn't help but wonder if something about me set off their alarms. I think I look pretty normal. At least I'd like to think that. But maybe to the security personnel, I looked like an individual who would follow someone into the women's bathroom or something. Anyways, because of the random check, I did get express service through security, and I didn't have to wait in line like the rest of the mob, who maybe all looked less likely to be unsavory individuals. But right, once we got through all that, we just sat around, waiting for a flight. I remember debating whether or not I should get an ice cap from Tim's, because the thing was, on one hand, I had a craving for it, and I knew that I wasn't gonna see a Tim Hortons again for the next couple of weeks, and they were also running a limited time special Oreo flavor, which I liked. But on the other hand, I didn't want to risk having to take a shit in the plane, and who wants to do that? I don't like taking a shit unless it's in my own home. For me, anywhere else is a no-go. Maybe a private toilet in a hotel room is fine, but definitely not if it's a public toilet. Unless if it's a genuine emergency and the only other perceivable option in that very moment is suitcasing it and retreating to a safe spot, which is suboptimal to say the very least. But I did get my little Oreo ice cap and I did gulp it down well before boarding time. Then we got on the plane. We took off, and my journey to paradise truly began. Although we did first have to stop in Calgary for a layover. No, first it was like 4 hours from Toronto Pearson to Calgary, then a couple of hours layover, and then 10 or so hours from Calgary to Narita. But anyway, first was flying to Calgary. Since it was a domestic flight, there wasn't a screen in front of me to watch movies on, but I had internet, so I had a bit of fun browsing the web 30,000 feet in the air, while gorging myself on celebration cookies and Coca-Cola because they were handing those out. I thankfully did not have to drop a log. Then we arrived in Calgary. Weirdly enough, we were actually here the previous year, in May of 2024. Back then, we were here because we visited Banff for a week or so. Is it fair to call the entire trip Banff? I know it's a small and succinct name, and when you tell people you went to Banff, they immediately know that you toured the general area around there. But it's a name that isn't completely representative of the entire experience. Like, you have the town of Banff, as well as the Banff National Park, both of which were indeed decent parts of our trip there. However, most of our trip time was spent not in either of those areas. Firstly, we didn't stay in the town of Banff. Our quarters for the trip weren't there. They were in a little village. It wasn't even a village. It was like a super small collection of buildings just on the side of the highway. A hamlet. It's called a hamlet. Our living quarters were in a teeny little hamlet that was a good few kilometers from all the tourist areas. Speaking of, it's not just Banff National Park. It's a whole bunch. It's an amalgamation of national parks, back to back. And a lot of the places we went to were spread across these parks over literal hundreds of kilometers. All that just to see the variations of the same damn thing. It was almost always a body of water surrounded by coniferous forests with snow-capped mountains in the background. That was basically all that we saw over the several days we were there, spread over many hours and kilometers traveling. But this broadcast isn't about Banff or the Rockies. That's a better name for it, since everything we went was along the Canadian Rockies. I got lost quite a bit there. I got carried away a bit. Maybe I'll cover that trip in a future broadcast if I can remember enough from that time. But right now, it's time for Japan. We arrived in Calgary for a 2-hour layover. I had a takeout box from Thai Express because it was around lunchtime, I think. We left Toronto in the morning at around 10 or 11 a.m. local time, at least. Then it was the big stretch. A 10 or so hour flight to Japan. So now, I was truly on my way to paradise. But it was in fact a long international flight. I did not sleep at any point during the flight, nor did I sleep in the flight to Calgary, because firstly, I had to be there whenever they went around with the cart giving snacks, meals, and/or drinks. But secondly, I'm personally not one to sleep during flights or any hours-long travel, because when I wake up afterwards, it isn't a pleasant feeling. Like, I feel like I committed a time skip, and now my head is pounding like a jackhammer, and then it'd still be like a good few more hours until we get to the destination. So I watched a few movies. The first movie I watched was Oppenheimer. Now, there's a couple of things I'd like to get across. Firstly, when I chose to watch Oppenheimer, all I was thinking was, that's the one movie from a couple of years ago that was viral or whatever. I haven't seen it yet, so sure, I'll watch it. That was all I thought. It did not cross my mind the correlation between Oppenheimer and Japan, but that was the least of my concern, really, because, well, firstly, if you watched Oppenheimer, you already know how much of a grave mistake I made choosing to watch it on a commercial flight. I went into it blind, not expecting anything that was particularly outlandish, and I was very much taken aback. And surely enough, everyone else, who just so happened to have my screen in their peripheral vision, felt the same way. This shouldn't even been possible. Why would they let people watch R-rated movies on a commercial flight? Oppenheimer starts going on about some I am become death the destroyer of worlds as Gene Tatlock goes down on him, and I'm stuck here wondering when they're gonna launch the fucking nukes. Isn't that what the movie's about? I'm pretty sure they do it again during his trial later in the movie, and that was great. Right, anyway. I also watched The Matrix from 1999. And I also watched Ready Player One, neither of which presented any issues. It's all well and good. Aside from that, there was dinner of sorts, because I guess it would be dinner by that point in time. There was teriyaki tofu, and I believe there was also some sort of fried rice, both of which were lame and soulless and sad like any sort of airline. Scran. Okay, after all that, after all the hours of traveling, all the mid-food I put up with, and all of the utter humiliation I suffered at the hands of a nuke-making guy who decided to get a bit funny with his communist missus, I eventually made it to the promised land. I stepped off the plane and took my first beautiful, magnificent steps in Japan. I made it, baby, and this was the start of something truly special. So we arrived at Narita Airport. If you don't know, Tokyo has 2 international airports. There's Haneda, which sits much closer to central Tokyo, and there's Narita, which is a lot further east of Tokyo, but as a result, it's closer to the Americas. We walk through the airport, we get all the red tape work done, and there we go. Officially arrived in Japan. How long have we been going for? 20 minutes? I'm not keeping track of the time because I don't want to pressure myself to get things out of my brain and pad it all out. I am instead just letting things flow out, like I said in the beginning. Obviously, you would know how much time exactly has passed, so maybe I have gone yapping for 20 minutes and I've only gotten to the part where I just arrived in Japan, crying out loud. What runtime did I say I was gunning for? 40? 50? If it gets to it, I may have to split this saga across two broadcasts. Anyway, we start settling into Tokyo. First, I get my IC card, which is this smart card that you load funds into the tap and pay transit fare. It works exactly like any other transit fare card. I don't know why I felt the need to explain it. I just think it's neat, alright? I got my lovely little welcome suica, they call it. We travel by train from the airport to our accommodation for the trip, or at least the accommodation for this particular leg of the trip. More on that later. Firstly, I'd like to note, as a guy who lives in Toronto and has had to frequently take public transit, the public transit in Tokyo, by comparison, it's like night and day. It's genuinely eye-opening how beautiful Japan's transit is, at least based on my brief experience. It's clean, it's reliable, and punctual. Tokyo's metro system looks like a Lovecraftian horror, but once you manage to wrap your head around it, you can easily go anywhere and everywhere you want in the city. Meanwhile, Toronto's transit is just lame and broken and sad. I don't mean to be hyperbolic, but it's like rickety and grimy and barely hanging on. Every other day, there's a delay or a closure because they gotta keep patching up the century-old infrastructure, or a homeless dude is way too off his tits on meth and has shit himself in a train car, or someone's thrown themselves in front of an oncoming train. You could probably go to the washroom in a subway station and come out as the second coming of Walter White. There's lots of things to say, but in the end, I still love it. But this isn't about Toronto, is it? I have gotten lost in the weeds once more, so let's get back to the business at hand. And that is, of course, the glory of Japan. So, we travel from the airport all the way to our Airbnb. It took maybe an hour or two, so that was plenty of time for me to let the reality sink in, that this was the paradise I longed for. Although, at that point, it was already dark. It was like 8 or 9 p.m. by the time we got to our accommodation, so I would have to wait until the following morning in order to truly bask in Japan's glory. But anyway, our quarters were located in Sumida City, which is what is known as a special ward of Tokyo. Tokyo's a super massive and super dense city, so they gotta divvy it up or something. Sumida City is the area with the Tokyo Sky Tree, which is this big tower with observation decks up top, and it lights up in a real nice way at night, and that was the first thing we saw coming out of the subway. A lovely greeting indeed. Spoiler alert, we did not end up going up the Sky Tree, and it's a damn shame. And even more spoiler alert, there are plenty of damn shames, as great as this whole trip was. There's a lot of things I want to say, okay? We get to our quarters, and it's this cozy little bare-bones room. There's nothing much in it, but it didn't matter too much since we'd spend most of our days out and about away from this room. It was just a place where we could sleep and wash up and all that. What did matter was that the beds barely had any stuffing and were otherwise rock hard, so the sleeping experience wasn't ideal. Speaking of washing up, I had my first experience with this wonderful little device called a bidet. Let me tell you, this was a game-changing piece of technology, after I had eventually deciphered the control panel because I can't read Japanese. Being illiterate doesn't feel great, because even though there's a whole bunch of English signage and everything, the trains and stations even have very considerate English announcements, there's still a whole bunch of Japanese text that I could not read for the life of me, which is quite unfortunate, really. I will get onto all my regrets at a later time, but what I will say now is that knowing how to read Japanese will improve your Japan trip by 1,000,000%. Definitely don't quote me on that. At least that's how I feel. You can definitely enjoy a Japan trip without knowing a lick of Nihongo. But what little Nihongo you do know most certainly helps not only you, but also the locals who you have to interact with. What was my point? I was talking about the bidet, and since most washrooms in Japan are equipped with these magnificent devices, I didn't have to worry about potentially suitcasing my payloads when I'm out and about, and good thing, because we were about to be very out and about. Speaking of which, I just remembered something truly disgraceful. You probably need to put your food down if you got any. So this was back when I was like 10 or so. I went to the cinema. I was probably there for, I think it was some Star Wars spin-off. What's it called? Rogue One. Was it Rogue One? Probably. While I was there, at some point, I had to go to the washroom. Just a number one, nothing too serious. But it was enough to force me to the washroom lest I leak. So I go into the washroom, and there's like two toilet stalls, both occupied, and a row of urinals beyond them. I decide to go to the urinal at the far end of that row because I didn't want to be in the way or anything, and as I make my way along the urinals to the last one at the end, about halfway through, I glance to my side and see that someone had taken a shit right in the urinal. And I remember how it was. There were no breaks, there was no shrapnel, wasn't messy. It was, for all that was worth, a very clean steamer. It was a fine achievement. Obviously, back then, I kind of just walked past it, did my business, and returned to my seat in the theater. But now that I'm sat here recalling all of this, it was quite something. But what I'm thinking is, how was it from the point of view, the perspective of the individual who committed this offense? Because try imagining yourself in their position. It's a total emergency. You run to the washroom with your sole objective being to drop your bomb before it's too late, and you're rapidly running out of time as you feel the bomb slowly crawl through your rectum. Let's say the stalls are occupied, but no one else is there. At least I hope there wasn't anyone else there, because shitting in a urinal with an audience is a ballsy move. But for all intents and purposes, let's say it was just you eating the shit within a few minutes lest all hell break loose, plus two fellas occupying the stalls. You've got two options, neither of which are very optimal. The first option is shit yourself, like a gentleman. Just let go. Drop it right in your own pants. Don't bother anyone else, just shit yourself. Then you have to get out of there while carrying that payload. You're not going to return to the theater, you're not going to finish your movie, and you're not going to get to finish your popcorn and drink that you paid up the ass for. You're going to get in your car, hoping it doesn't spill out lest you have to write the car off. You go straight home and take a shower with your clothes on. Maybe you can do all of that without arousing suspicion. Probably not. Suboptimal. The second option is to knock on the stalls that are occupied and explain your situation to the people inside and hope and pray that one of those people is sympathetic enough and can finish their business and let you in so everyone comes out there unscathed. You gotta tell them, excuse me, I'm really sorry to bother you, but I'm in a bit of a pinch, and you've got about 20 seconds to let me in there before I'm gonna have to do something unspeakable in this washroom. Whether I have to drop it on the floor, or in the urinal, or in the sink, or even if I have to suitcase it back to my car, something terrible is about to happen, and only you have the power to stop it, so please let me in. But if they don't let you in, they'll know it was you. Even if they didn't see your face or your body, they would have heard your voice as you pleaded in desperation. They would have seen what shoes you were wearing, or even your pants. So when they walk out of the stall and they see whatever you've done, whatever decision you made, whether you left it on the floor or the urinal or in the sink, or if you just had to suitcase it back to your car and left a trail of destruction in your wake, they're gonna have a fairly accurate description of you for law enforcement. And law enforcement should be involved for when someone curls a steamer into the urinal with a minimum sentence of 15 years imprisonment. So those are your two options. Either you shit yourself like a gentleman, or try and get other people involved in your predicament, neither of which are ideal. That would leave you with a third option, which is to stay silent and simply to curl it in the urinal. Or, if you got more class, you pinch it with paper towels, drop it in the sink, and turn on the tap and hope that it all erodes away before one of those people come out of the stalls. But by that time, you'd be long gone without a word, and if you got extra nerve, you return to your seat in the theater and keep watching your movie like nothing happened. What was my point? What was I talking about? See, this is what happens. I get carried away. I was talking about bidets and how great they were. Maybe. But whatever. It was the first day, or rather, day 0, since we arrived in the evening. The real trip started tomorrow. So all we really did was just settle down. We went to a convenience store. Oh, convenience stores. Convenience stores in Japan, or kombini as they call it, are a completely different beast. In Tokyo, there's one every block, and each one has basically everything you need for daily life. Snacks, drinks, ready-made food and meals, and such and much more. I wish convenience stores chains in Canada were like that, but no, they're all attached to gas stations and charge you up the ass for the product. You have to pay for the convenience in question. We visited a kombini and got some meals that you just toss in the microwave, which were, of course, fire, because these were Japanese meals, and that's all that really matters. And that was our dinner. And then we called it a night. The first lovely night in Japan. How long has it been? 30 minutes now? Oh dear. Well, even though I've only managed to get to the arrival day of our Japan trip, I think I'm gonna have to wrap it up here. This is good though. This sort of thing is exactly what I'm going for. For I am absolutely milking my main topic for all that it's worth and going on random, vaguely related tangents along the way. So there's more content for the broadcast. So I'm gonna wrap this up right now. I'll be back in a new broadcast to continue my Japan saga. I apologize if all of this was a bit boring. As much as I want to put a lovely comedic spin on everything, this is above all else a vent sesh for me and me only. So all you hear is whatever comes to mind. I guess you can leave some questions down in the comments, which I could get to in the broadcast. Right, whatever. I bid you all adieu. Thank you and goodbye.